If you want to understand how fragile modern water systems really are, study how ordinary people survived when those systems did not exist or could not be trusted. During World War II, civilian water security became a silent battlefield. Bombing campaigns shattered municipal lines, fuel shortages crippled pumping stations, and entire neighbourhoods were cut off from centralised supply with little warning. Families who had water survived. Families who did not were forced to move, barter, or depend on relief. What emerged during those years were cistern designs so efficient, discreet, and independent that many post-war utilities later moved to restrict or outlaw them. Not because they failed, but because they worked too well outside centralised control. By the early 1950s, as cities rebuilt and utilities consolidated power, regulations quietly appeared that discouraged or outright banned private water capture and storage at scale. What follows is not theory or folklore. These are historically documented cistern designs that kept households, farms and small communities functioning during total disruption, and which still outperform many modern systems if applied correctly today. Why wartime cisterns were designed for resilience instead of convenience. World War II cisterns were not built for comfort. They were built for continuity. Designers assumed electricity might vanish, pipes might rupture, and repairs might take months. So, as a result, most cisterns relied on gravity-simple filtration and, redundancy. The walls were thick, often reinforced with stone, brick, or even concrete scavenged from bomb debris. Access points were kept minimal to reduce contamination, and overflow systems were, deliberate rather than accidental. Modern homeowners can actually apply this thinking right away by prioritizing passive water flow, manual access, and, honestly, storage that doesn't rely on pumps to function. The buried, gravity-fed cistern that once survived both bombing and frost. One of the most common wartime designs was the fully buried cistern placed downhill from roof catchment. This design protected water from freezing, shrapnel and evaporation. Water entered through ceramic or metal downspouts, passed through a sand and charcoal chamber and settled in a dark underground tank where, algae growth was minimal. A simple hand pump, or, even a bucket access, allowed retrieval without power. Today, this same approach works by placing storage below frost depth, using modern food-safe liners, and relying on gravity rather than pressure. The multi-chamber settling cistern, it purified water without chemicals. Another highly effective design used sequential chambers. The first chamber caught debris and sediment. The second slowed water flow to allow fine particles to settle. The third stored only clarified water. No chemicals were required. Maintenance involved periodic flushing of the first chamber. Modern users can recreate the system using concrete rings or modular tanks, gaining reliable pre-filtration before any modern treatment is applied. So, the shared courtyard cistern, right? It supplied entire apartment blocks. In those dense European cities, you see, families would pool their resources together to build courtyard cisterns, which were fed by multiple roofs. These things were often disguised as, decorative wells, or even planters, just to avoid being targeted. Access, of course, was rationed and scheduled, you know. The lesson here, really, is about scale and cooperation. Even today, shared water infrastructure among trusted neighbours, well, it dramatically increases resilience and honestly reduces the individual burden. Then there's the narrow-profile wall cistern, which utilities later targeted. Some of the most controversial designs, actually, were these slim cisterns built right inside exterior walls or tucked between buildings. They managed to capture rainwater invisibly and store thousands of litres, all without altering the skyline at all. After the war, utilities actually saw these systems as, well, unmetered competition. These days, you know, modern equivalents can be set up indoors along basement walls using vertical tanks that save space and stay protected from the weather. The overflow to irrigation cistern, it really wasted nothing at all. During the war, farmers designed cisterns with intentional overflow channels that led straight to gardens or livestock troughs. So any excess water never even touched the drains. These days, modern homesteaders can copy this approach by directing overflow to swales or raised beds, basically turning heavy rainfall into stored fertility. It's clever, really. The sacrificial first flush system, you know, was what protected drinking water back then. W2 cistern builders really understood the risks of roof contamination. First flush diverters were common, letting that initial dirty runoff just bypass storage entirely. This clever method protected drinking water without needing any filters. And today, well, a simple diverter pipe or valve does the same job with hardly any cost at all. The winter-sealed cistern now, that was a design that stayed usable all year round. In cold climates, cisterns were sealed up with layered lids, straw insulation and a cover of earth. Ice might form on the surface, but the water below, it stayed liquid. This approach still works, and honestly, it's far more reliable than those exposed tanks or shallow barrels. The camouflaged emergency cistern, you know, hidden right there in plain sight. Some cisterns were deliberately disguised as fuel tanks, compost pits, or even structural supports. Their purpose was survival, not aesthetics. While camouflage is, well, less necessary today, discreet placement still remains valuable in preventing tampering or contamination. The maintenance-first design, you know, it actually outlasted the war itself. Perhaps the most important lesson here is that those Way-2 cisterns were built so they could be cleaned, repaired and, well, understood by ordinary people. There were no proprietary parts, none at all. Every component was accessible, plain and simple. You know, modern systems often fail because they're just too complex. Simplicity, honestly, remains the strongest form of resilience. So, why were these designs restricted after the war? And, well, why do they still matter today? As centralised water systems expanded in the 1950s, many municipalities went on to restrict large private cisterns, usually under the guise of sanitation and control. But really, the true issue was independence. These systems, you see, reduced reliance on utilities. These days, with aging infrastructure and, climate volatility, the logic of wartime systems is making a comeback. The knowledge never really disappeared. It was simply sidelined. If this sort of practical history matters to you, and if you reckon resilience is built through understanding rather than just gadgets, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Go ahead and share this video with someone who values self-reliance and lessons that have already been tested under pressure.